Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing the new Power Shift seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which, at the start of the match, every unit in our starting deck gets its power set to its provision cost, significantly increasing the power of many cards. Today we are revisiting what has been our most successful deck in this event, because a lot has changed since then, so let's go give it a look. So today we're going to be playing a new and updated version of our Northern Realms Shieldwall Ciri deck, that previously we focused on getting a combination of removal and boosting engines. This time, we're shifting things over a little bit more toward the control side of things. So the key things here are that we have the duelists, Oneiromancy, who in this event is 10 base power, giving him amazing removal potential, especially when you combine that with a shield from our leader ability. And similar story with Selkirk as well. We also, in addition to that, have some Geralts who, of course, not only have a bunch of removal power, but have 10 base power. And because there are a lot of cards that have much higher base power in this event, plenty of easy targets for Geralt to take out. And similar story for Igni and Quen to help get those Geralts, in addition to, of course, the centerpieces of the deck, Ciri Dash, to give us some card draw, and Ciri as well, to give us another kind of, source of card draw. If we lose the round while Ciri is on the board, then she goes back into our hand, functionally giving us card draw or card advantage, however you want to phrase it. Ciri has been kind of, sort of buffed, kind of, sort of nerfed. She was previously a 10 provision cost card, which means she's now less expensive. However, in this event, it means she now has less power. It shouldn't make a huge difference because she's still a really big card for us to play, but unfortunately for her, it does mean she's no longer a 10. Then we have even more removal with Iek, and again, there are just so many tall units out there that there will be no shortage of options for him to take out. And relatively similar story with Vincent as well, where as long as the unit hasn't been boosted, he can reset one of those 10, maybe even 11 or 12 provision cost cards back down to a 1, making this really big, and since he has Zeal, really easy to pull off. Then both Roach and Knickers are especially big because they, of course, significant base power increases, and give us additional thinning, as always. We have a little more thinning with a couple of Dun banners, however, we actually don't have a lot of boosting in this deck, somewhat surprisingly for Northern Realms, so unless you happen to have a spare leader ability charge, or a boosting special that we'll talk about in a second, then Dun banner is probably a card you're going to want to just mulligan out of your hand. Because in terms of engines, that is the key thing that we've changed here. We just have a Kirac City Guard, and a couple of Redanian Knights, both of which will generate value the longer they stay on the board, but we have gotten rid of many of the engines that we used previously with this deck in order to make room for additional removal. Then, speaking of removal, even as we're starting to get toward the bottom of the deck here, we also have Red Haze, which is still a potentially quite solid source of damage, because again, there are tons of high power units out there in this event, just need them to be placed right next to each other for this to work, which isn't always the case, so it's a little bit more of a risk than our other sources of removal. Then Redanian Elite is a point slam because, in this event, has 4 base power, getting him up to a 10, and even if he does get reset after losing the armor, he's still at least at 4 power, so at least he's still doing something. Then we have a Field Medic for a little bit of boosting, and a Knife Juggler for a little bit more damage, although these are probably 2 of our weaker cards that you just don't want to have in your hand. And lastly, there is a Crow's Eye in case Selkirk gets locked and you don't get the chance to use his order ability, or maybe one of the series gets locked. But worse comes to worse, you could also use it on a Dun banner to boost it up and get the other one thinned out from your deck. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, it is all about a combination of gaining card advantage with the series, and then using a bunch of Geralts and other forms of removal to shut down our opponent's biggest cards. So let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against Northern Realms here, and we'll go first. Okay, so we have at least a couple of engines here with Redanian Knights, so those can be good early round plays. And then we have a few Geralts here, several Geralts really, and then we can use Quen to get one of the series if needed. Redanian Elite is a bit of a finisher, Iek for more removal. Let's probably get rid of the Field Medic, I think is our weakest option here. Ciri Dash is certainly a strong card. It means we only have base Ciri remaining in terms of other Witchers in our deck for Geralt Quen to tutor, so do need to be a little bit careful here not to get too aggressive with our other mulligans, otherwise we might break this to a certain extent. So I think, maybe we get rid of it. Maybe we can do better than you. Yeah, might be a little bit better. We do have, that means all 3 of our primary engines in our hand here. So we probably don't want to play all of them in round 1. But why don't we start with one of our Redanian Knights and just wait and see what they have for their deck. Of course, the earlier we play this, the more it will get boosted. Sayer Quan is a really solid point slam, because rather than starting out at 2 power, it starts out at 8. That being said, we could potentially do something on our next turn if they happen to play something big next to it with Red Haze, but I doubt that's going to be the case. Could always remove it with Geralt of Rivia or Igni, once the row gets a little bit bigger for Igni, but I think Ick might be the right balance here. So let's play him. That'll also get out Roach. And I'm pretty sure I'm seeing a card moving in their hand, so I think they have Sunset Wanderers, which, technically speaking, would become very, very big. Not sure if it'd be quite as big as Sayer Quan, depends a little bit on how many cards they play in their hand and where exactly those are relative to Sunset Wanderers, but that's a bit of an aside. Basically, just means that it might be worth being a little bit patient here with Ick and seeing if we can have an even better card, but I mean, Sayer Quan at 18 power is pretty darn solid value there. So, I mean, we could do that, and then maybe we play one more of our engines here in round 1, like the Kyrek City Guard. They've some damage with the Iron Falcon Knife Juggler, just wondering if we have reason to prefer Kyrek City Guard over Redanian Knight. Maybe we go Kyrek City Guard. And sure, we will remove Sayer Quan. There is a non-zero chance that by the time they got Sunset Wanderers, which they definitely do have, by the time they got it out, that it might have turned into an 18 power card, or 16 power card in this case. And that we might have been able to remove them both simultaneously with Igni, which would have been amazing, but was fairly unlikely if they were mindful of what power their cards were on. They should have done everything they could to avoid having that happen. Little surprised that they played Sunset Wanderers directly from their hand, though. So, what does that mean for us? I mean, we can destroy it with Geralt of Rivia, which is probably a very tempting option here, seeing as how we're not going to get much better than 16 damage or 16 removal from Geralt. So, yeah, I think we probably do that. It's a little too good to pass up on that. The thing is, we have now used several very strong cards in round 1. So, and now they're probably just going to use a bunch of throwaways here and say, alright, you know, they'll give us the round 1 win, but at the cost of basically using all of our best cards to make it happen. So, I think for that reason, we probably don't want to do anything big here. We would like to save the Redanian Knight, though, because that is our one key engine remaining that we'd like to save for our first play in round 2 or round 3. So, don't really want to be doing Geralt Gwen, or Donimir, or Igni, or Ciri Dash at this point. I think that means it's probably just a really, really lackluster Red Haze. Again, on the assumption, the understanding that I'm fairly certain that what they are doing here is they are trying to get us to just commit big cards, and from here on out, they're just going to play little things and to try to finish out this round and hand us the round 1 win, like this, exactly. So just didn't want to sacrifice anything big here. So that means we'll take the round 1 win. Okay, and we draw into Onces, that's great. That is one of our biggest cards we have remaining. The other one is base Ciri, but remember that we can get her with Geralt Gwen. And Redanian Elite as a point slam is certainly not bad. Crow's Eye is potentially useful for either Ciri Dash or base Ciri. If we play them in the same round as Donimir, then we can hide them behind Donimir. But I am thinking we're probably going to push at least a little bit here in round 2, because we do have at least one throwaway card here. We could go Gwen into base Ciri. That way, we can say, we're fine with losing round 2, and if we do, we're going to get a card back. That actually means we're going to want to play one more throwaway card. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to be, so maybe we do Dump You, and it's probably going to be a Redanian Elite in that case. And we'll just test them a bit here to see what, if anything, they want to do in response to this, because despite being a 4 provision cost card, 10 power is nothing to snuff at, and that might even be why they're playing Onces here. Now, that is obviously a huge, huge play. We could, technically speaking, we could use Onces in the melee row, use a leader ability charge, and then immediately remove him. because we'd have Zeal, whereas they obviously don't. We could also proceed to, well, we can't Igni him yet. But, I mean, dueling a Redanian Elite, yes, does reset him, but it still just feels rather silly. So I'm actually kind of tempted. I'm kind of tempted to go Redanian Elite number 2. I was originally going to just go straight into Geralt, Quen into base Ciri here, but if we do that, then that becomes the immediate on-stage target for the dueling, and we definitely don't want to lose Ciri to that. So I think we just go second Redanian Elite. And I think they might duel one of them, which feels like terrible value. Yes, it's a 10 power card, true, but oh, Philippa is very, very well timed. That's a great play. But they do still... 4 points. 4 points on Onsace's duel. Alright, man. If you say so. So, now that that duel is no longer something that they can do, that means doing something like Quen into base Ciri is suddenly a lot more palatable. So, I am very much thinking that might be what we're going for here. So, yeah. I think that is the plan. I think that is probably the plan. Let's split them into different rows. Technically, Ciri only has 2 targets for the damage, so that's not a huge deal. You could potentially justify putting a leader ability charge on Ciri. I don't really think that's as much of a threat now that they've already used Onsace's order ability. There's a non-zero chance that they could use Varaxis to get that order ability back. I'm pretty skeptical of that being the case. It's Doppler for a point slam. Okay, so that was a, what, 6-point boost, right? And they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in their hand. Okay, so, I mean, that actually, interestingly, that does tell us quite a bit. That actually means they don't have any Geralts. They don't have any Witchers at all. They only have humans, I have to imagine. So, does that change anything? Because originally the plan was pass here and get the Ciri back into our hand, and we've successfully bled out both Philippa and Onsace, which is pretty nice. But given how they may not have great control options remaining anymore, does that mean that we press our luck a bit here, and perhaps even go quite a bit longer in round 2 with Ciri Dash? Tell you what, we're going to try it. And so, obviously, if they had Igni, this would be an amazing time to use it in our melee row, but unless it happens to be they have 6 Witchers in their hand, I really doubt that. No, it's all humans. Okay, and Gascon now becomes a 16, which is a great target for Igni or even Onsace to duel, and yes, now that we've played Ciri Dash, we need this round to go longer in order for her ability to kick in here, so we suddenly are looking to play quite a bit more. Redanian Knight becomes a little tricky, because if we were originally anticipating that this round was going to go longer, we would have played him first. But now that we kind of midway through decided, oh, wait, hold on, maybe we do want to do that. He's not going to have a lot of time in this round, but if we continue to push here in round 2, then round 3 is not going to be much longer either, so he's not going to have much time to get boosted then. So, I think we probably still do this. And the most dangerous card they could play would probably be Seltkirk, because we know it's a human. We know it's all humans here. So any potential answers would have to be additional humans. It's Redanian Knight for them as well. So those are basically just going to match each other. And so yeah, Seltkirk to duel would take a turn before they could do that because he does not have Zeal. So that means, what, they would need to play him on their next turn. And we could use Onsace to get rid of him. So I think we save Onsace. And I mean, we could obviously protect one of the series with Donimir. I mean, that's, to tell you the truth, that's probably going to be what happens here no matter what. Yeah. It's either it's that or it's Igni. And Igni for 16 is obviously great. But maybe we try saving him? Maybe we try saving him. So I think we protect Ciri Dash. Obviously, we could also protect, to a certain extent, with Shieldwall as well. But now it is, barring an Igni, which again, we pretty much know they can't do. That means that we're going to get this card draw from Ciri. Yes, another point slam for Redanian Elite. So, at this point, we now know we will definitely get enough cards, or enough turns, to get the card draw from Ciri. If we pass now, that means we'll get 1 card from Ciri Dash, giving us up to 3. We lose the round, we get Ciri, base Ciri that is, back into our hand, giving us 4 cards, meaning we have double, or last say, and then card advantage, which equates to double last say in round 3, which is awesome, especially when you have a duelist. So I do really like holding on to Onsays for that reason. However, Igni for 16 on Gascon and forcing them to play even more cards is a hard option to turn down here. So it's a little greedy. It is definitely a little greedy. And I wish these were all lined up in this row to take out both those 10s, but no, we'll settle for 16. Card draw turns into Iron Falcon Knife Juggler. I'm thinking we're definitely going to pass on our next turn, because now they need to play at least 1 more card to catch up to us. It's Vivian. That is a really solid option. 22 would have been even better for Igni, but perhaps more significantly, we've forced them to play all these cards in round 2, so we've bled them out. And bled out leader ability as well. So yeah, they're playing just about everything that they can here. And so now we're at 2 cards apiece, which means we'll get the card back into our hand with Ciri. Already have the card draw from Ciri Dash, of course. So card advantage, double last say. We have Onsays, which is going to be amazing with double last say. We'll mulligan out Iron Falcon Knife Juggler into something else, because we do still have, in theory, both Vincent and Selkirk hanging out in our deck. Those are our best cards we have remaining. So I think this is the right time to pass. They will, of course, as well, which means they'll win round 2, but at a significant cost. Okay, so we draw into Field Medic, which is not great. Royal Decree, which is awesome, because that means we can either use that to get Selkirk or to get Vincent, and then Dun Banner. We technically, I think, have leader ability charges remaining, so we could potentially get some thinning there, but I'm thinking we probably do dump you. There's Vincent, and then we probably dump Iron Falcon Knife Juggler as well then. Crow's Eye, unlikely to be relevant. Anna Strenger. So she's obviously going to boost units next to her, which is going to make Vincent hard to pull off. So it's not perfect, but we might actually use Vincent on her. Yeah, and Royal Decree is definitely going to be Selkirk. And unless we go Onsays to duel her, which is also not ideal. Ciri we held onto. She's still 12 points, even if her losing a round to get her back to her hand thing is obviously no longer relevant in round 3. But yeah, I think it's probably Vincent. Because if they had any intention of getting her inspired, that suddenly becomes way more difficult. Okay, it's a Doppler again, so it is a point slam, but in a short round, it's not nearly as high of a point slam. And so, I think, given how we have double last say, we can save all of our big cards till at/near the end of this round. So let's start small, and perhaps go with something like maybe even Crow's Eye here, and I mean, it does get Vincent up to a 9, which could potentially get him into removal range, but not really sure that's a huge deal. We can, however, just outright remove Endestranger with Ciri, so I think we go that route. It does mean there's 1 fewer target for Ciri to take out here, but since Endestranger was going to at least be worth 1 point per turn, I think it was still worth it. And putting them next to each other so that we can go Field Medic on our next turn. So that Kyrk City Guard will continue to get boosted, but it does not have much time to do that, so I think we'll still be fine. And with only 2 cards remaining here, they are running out of time to find an answer. They're moving things around with Kyrk City Guard. That's a little bit odd. I actually don't like Windhelm. That shield complicates things quite a bit, because that means he's not going to be a great target for us to duel with either Onsays or Selkirk unless we seriously overpower them with a bunch of boosts. So, that being said, we probably have enough units out here that it's just not going to matter all that much. We probably do... technically, we could go Prozai this turn, Selkirk next turn with Royal Decree, and then Onsace in the melee row on our last turn. That way we do still have time to use his duel ability. That is possible. It means we're missing out on 3 extra points of damage on the duel, but if we're not going to be dueling Windhelm anyway, then that extra few boosts on the dueling units may not be all that significant, so I think we do just go with a bit of a throwaway here, or at least a very minor play with Prozai on the field medic again to make sure that we're not putting any of our big cards on the board here in case they have something big. Dandelion Poet doesn't do much directly other than just being an 11-point body, but it could give them a Geralt or something like that, but no, it's Ronvid. That's actually going to be fairly big. And these now become our best dueling targets. So they have a solid lead here, and Windhelm will continue to get bigger. But now we go Royal Decree into Selkirk. And the reason why we waited to do these was so that they would not have any way of shutting them down. You do need to be a little bit careful when you do that with Selkirk because he does not have any way of getting Zeal, whereas if we play Onsace in the melee row, he does. So, just need to be mindful of that. As we were saying, Windhelm will continue to get it bigger, but now we go Onsace needs to be melee row. And remember, needs to have the boost, otherwise it's just 4 damage, not the duel. And the dueling is definitely needed here. And we'll just use that to take these guys out. And, I mean, we have a leader ability charge to spare. So there you have it. We'll take the win. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here. And they'll go first. Okay, so we have 2 Dun Banners in hand. We definitely don't want to have that. We arguably may not even want to have this second Dun Banner. It is one of our weaker cards, and we don't have a ton of ways to thin out, or rather to boost cards, so it's going to be a little bit harder to thin it out. However, speaking of that, definitely want to get rid of Knickers. And unfortunately, we got Roach. Okay, so obviously we can put Roach back into our deck going into round 2. It's not the end of the world, but really, Tourney Joust to boost your Lamp Chin is a little bit odd. So I think what we start off with here is, obviously, we could remove that Lamp Chin. I'm not terribly concerned about it. So why don't we lead off with the Redanian Knight? Because that is an engine. We don't actually have that many engines in our deck, despite us being a Northern Realms deck that normally would have a whole lot of that stuff. And I am curious to see how they react to this. They give it Spying, so maybe we're going to see some more Assimilate and a Terra Nova later on. But I mean, if they're going to go Terra Nova on a Redanian Knight, that's probably fine by us. So then it's primarily control options here. Outside of that Dun Banner, if we do really want to play this, we can, of course, use a leader ability charge on it. Not super thrilled about that. The other thing we could do would be to go Geralt Quen into one of our series for either card draw after 4 turns, or... we have the other Ciri in our hand, actually? We do. Or play her to get her back into our hand if we lose this round. Obviously, we're talking about going against Nilfgaard, so they very well may have a lot more control options than other types of decks, including potentially even stealing one of our cards with Yenvo. So I don't love that. Given how they started quite slowly. Let's play a Dun Banner. We don't need to rush into boosting this up, but I want to see what their plan is here. It's coup de grace on Redanian Knight. I mean, like, yeah, sure, it does get rid of its armor, shutting off the engine, but not exactly the most inspiring coup de grace I've ever seen. So, yes, you do get a Redanian Knight on your side because you gave it Spying, but it starts off at a 1, or rather at a 2 now, after the recent buff, but it's not in your starting deck, so it's a little bit weaker than ours was, and we don't have a great way to remove it yet, but if they play anything else in the range row, we can obviously use Red Haze to disrupt this, so not too concerned about that. Oh, we also have Royal Decree, so we can get just about anything we'd like in that case. Is there anything in particular that catches our attention? Speaking of engines, Kirac City Guard or Redanian Knight might be an interesting option here, seeing as how they did just shut off our other engine, so yeah, let's do that. I think we'll go Kirac City Guard, given the Veil prevents them from locking, which, since we're talking about going up against Nilfgaard, could be a factor. We saw they tried to give, and did give, Spying to that Redanian Knight. Ooh, Yawn. They're up to some funny business. You don't play Yawn if you don't have a very specific plan in place for round 2 and round 3, so I think we definitely need to win round 1. Otherwise, they're going to get to pull off whatever combo they're looking to do, and we're going to be at their mercy. So we could destroy Yawn. I mean, he's already done his thing since he's primarily all about the deployability. But We could use Red Haze to shut off this Redanian Knight. Obviously, it's just 4 power now, yes, but it will continue to get bigger, so there is something to be said for shutting it down. We could even move it with the Kyrok City Guard. Don't think that's a huge deal, though. We'd probably prefer to continue to have her get boosted. So, yeah, it doesn't look like it's a lot of points in the short term, but long term it would start to become more significant there. And we may have better options for our stronger control cards here. Kyrok City Guard, they are just copying us here. How dare they? We do have enough targets if we want to use Ciri. Yeah, they're on blue coin. It does make for an interesting play here. I'm expecting, tell you what, I'm expecting for them to be pushing really hard in round 1, going for as long as they need to go to win round 1. And that may mean that a late Ciri is an option. So maybe we hold off on her, go with Iek here, and either destroy Jan, or, I mean, I don't think this Kyrok City Guard's going to get big enough for that to become even bigger than a 10, but we'll see. There's always the chance that, yep, he gets either stolen or locked, but, I mean, he is still weaker than our other control options with the Geralt, so definitely, and the series, which, as I was saying, I was kind of hesitant to play them as early as we were originally planning to play them, because they might have done just that, Yenvoed it, but now, if we were to go Quen, I mean, Quen is a big point slam if we combine that with another Witcher, and might need to be Igni, because Ciri Dash takes some time to do her thing, and it's pretty late on in the round, so that's not the best of options. We can get Onsace down here. He is comparatively a little bit safer than he would have been a turn ago, but he is one of our better cards we would probably like to save. So maybe, I mean, we have enough Geralts here and access to future Geralts that might not be the worst thing in the world to just remove you. Take the lead, get Knickers out, giving us a much larger lead. Our engines are matching each other, while Mage Torturers will continue to switch that up. Now this makes me more concerned. Them giving spying to Geralt. They go for Onsace with their leader ability. Definitely a sign they're trying to be very aggressive in round 1, as expected. Again, though, he only gets 4 power because he's not from their starting deck, not the 10 power from our Onsace. They are just barely in the lead here. And so, I feel like, you know, the later we can play Ciri, the better, if we are expecting that they're planning to win and go at whatever cost it takes to make themselves win round 1. It might still be late enough. We want to make sure that we're at least below 4 cards, because otherwise, if you're at 4 cards, then that's sort of the key threshold for dry passing in round 2 and still drawing back up to maximum cards in round 3. But now that we're at 3, if we play Ciri, she is much more of a factor. So maybe this is late enough for this to make sense. And I guess we'll just get the engines. So obviously we are in the lead right now. So we're either winning on even, or they are doing something here to... I mean, this is going to have to be... Oh, I was expecting a Duchess's Informant, but that is, yes, worth a lot of points. We can Onsace and get rid of their Onsace, or Brotham's is still going to continue to gain value, so he'd probably be the preferred target, definitely be the preferred target. So, I mean, we could do that, or we could say, nah, you know what? We played Ciri. We're okay with losing this round, because that means, at this point, they'll be at 2 cards. We'll be at 4 cards. So we'd actually have card advantage for the rest of the match, which is potentially quite significant. So, you know what? That does make Onsace much more effective, or at least make it much easier for us to play him and Selkirk in round 3, giving us at least last say, if not potentially even double last say. So, yes, they were clearly up to some funny business when they played Jan, and that does make me a little bit concerned, but I think we can still pass here, because we're going to get Ciri back, unless they go even more cards down to mess with Ciri with a lock, or to destroy her, or don't think they can seal her after they played Yenvo. But what we did was we deliberately, yes, let them win round 1, but at a significant cost. And so they will take the round 1 win. However, I think they realized they just fell for our trap, so they forfeit. Alright, so going up against Northern Realms here. And we'll go first. Okay, so we have Knickers in hand. Obviously, we'd like to put Knickers back into our deck, so let's do that. And then, other than that, And Dunbanner is okay if we can get a source of boosts on it, like with Crow's Eye to get some thinning or leader ability charge, but for the most part, probably looking to get rid of that. Except we definitely don't want Roach. Okay, and Selkirk is great. So, this could even be a bit of a mirror match here, since they are obviously also Northern Realm Shieldwall, but I think at least to lead things off here, let's begin with one of our engines. Say Redanian Knight or Kirac City Guard, since of course those are the cards that gain more value the longer they're on the board. There's always the chance that they'll have a way to shut it down, but we'd rather they focus all their control on one of these cards rather than some of the bigger guys, like a Ciri. Mantlet. Okay. That I didn't necessarily see coming. That surprises me to a certain extent. Okay, so they're going to get more armor. It is also a siege engine, so I don't know if that means we're going to see a whole lot more siege engines, and it's actually going to be a siege check. If so, that's a little bit odd coming from Shieldwall, but I suppose it's possible. So, anyway, we could either go with another engine with Kirac City Guard, although this deck actually doesn't have that many engines in it, surprisingly, so we might want to try to save that if possible. Or, I mean, we're trying to do Ciri Dash in this round, then we do need to play her a little bit on the early side, but I still think this might be a bit too early, so, okay, we'll take a chance here. We'll go Kirac City Guard. Even if it potentially leaves us a little bit light on the engines for future rounds. Okay, it is Reinforced Trebuchet, so yes, it does look like there's going to be some siege here for sure. So at least for slightly longer, Redanian Knight is going to last here, or we'll get one more turn of boosting out of it, and then it'll hit you. Unless you play something else bigger. Okay, so yeah. What does that tell us? I mean, we can't use Red Haze yet, but they're probably going to be more Reinforced Trebuchets and or Siege Engines coming in the not-so-distant future. And likely some more targeted damage rather than just this random damage. So, how does that make us feel about Ciri Dash? I think they aren't going to have much in the way of Geralts for outright removal. I think they're probably going to be just leaning on those Siege Engines for all the damage to carry them. So it might be a little bit on the safer side. It is still a little early for Ciri. So, tell you what, maybe what we do here is we'll use a Redanian Elite. It is definitely, I mean, definitely losing that armor at some point. And so it's a bit of removal bait here. We're just going to see what else they have. Could have even put it in the range row, knowing that this was going to lose its armor at some point, and just try to split out that Reinforced Trebuchet damage a little bit across 2 units, of course. Still be a bit of a calculated risk. There is the damage from the Trebuchet. Get rid of the armor on the Redanian Knight, and that hits Ronvid. And with Ronvid next to the Reinforced Trebuchet, we could go Red Haze here, except the Trebuchet no longer has any long-term value, as we currently do not have anything in the range row. So, don't really think we need to go that route. We could go Vincent and reset Roach from a 9 down to a 1. That's solid value, yes. I mean, there's certainly still a chance we might get a little bit better value than that if we are to be even more patient with Vincent. Not sure we're going to be able to make that work, though, so tell you what, I think this is just about the amount of time that we were looking to wait before we played Ciri, because otherwise we get our card draw, and we were already going to have more than enough cards to be able to dry pass in round 2 and still make it to round 3, and it wasn't really going to make a difference. Whereas now, that might be more significant. My concern here is that our melee row is getting a little crowded, and Igni would be very effective right about now. Now, of course, if they do try to lock Ciri, we can purify her. We can also put Veil on her on our next turn if we'd really like, but she absolutely has a target on her back right now, which makes me a little worried. Okay, Royal Decree, so if they have an answer, this is probably what they're looking for. Yes, it is Baral for poison, so that is another thing that we could purify with Crow's Eye, or we could use our stratagem here. Surely they must know that we can just use our stratagem. It makes it so that either she can't get a second poison, or we remove this initial poison, they're going to have to find another source, which maybe they're rocking more poison. I mean, if you have Moral, I'd have to, I mean, usually you would have more than just him for poison, because there is always this risk, but there's a chance he's the only source, I guess. Either way, Crystal Skull is probably the safer option, just in case they do have additional sources. But now it means... Now... Ooh. Your armor makes it that we can't get rid of you with Red Haze, but we can get rid of Roach. So maybe we go that route. And then that means that since you are still not boosted, we could go with Vincent on our next turn to reset you. They are continuing to play, which is actually really good. That would have been the ideal time for them to pass, in all likelihood, because now, by playing here, that pretty much guarantees that we're going to get Ciri to give us card draw, unless, for some reason, they have a form of removal on Ciri, and they just have opted not to use it. Maybe they, for some reason, thought that that second round of poison was going to work when Ciri had Veil. But alas, of course, it does not. They also get Knickers out here, and that is kind of interesting, that even with Knickers and Roach, they still have not been able to pass us. I mean, I suppose we got the same thing, so maybe that's why. So now, I think it is probably Vincent on... Morale is the best target. Remember, we can't do it on a boosted target, so it doesn't work on Ronvid here. But, I mean, anything else we'd like to save? Our Geralts and Selkirk, probably. We could. Crow's Eye on somebody, but that's definitely not really needed. So, let's go Vincent here. And can we put him in between some big units? Kinda, sorta. Because it is certainly possible that they have a Red Haze of their own. So now we do this to reset you. And that's very well likely to be the last card that we play in this round. But we could, if we're still in the lead, use a Crow's Eye as a bit of a throwaway. Because right now, 4 cards is usually the key breaking point in round 1. Because if you drive past in round 2, that's where you still get up to the maximum of 10 cards there. However, because we are about to draw a card from Ciri, even if they pass, I mean, sure. Obviously, we don't need to play anything else, but there's a card draw, and there is a round 1 win. So now that means that we are tied at 8 cards apiece, and we won round 1, so that puts us in a really powerful position here. And Ciri is the perfect card for this situation, because even though normally I would drive past when we're in the lead like this, when we won round 1, with 1 card to throw away, Ciri is perfect when you won round 1, since we don't need to win round 2, and they do, so it puts them in a really tough position unless they can remove her altogether. But let's get rid of probably the Knife Juggler. Redanian Knight, I mean, we could throw one of these down either at the beginning of this round or more likely round 3. Field Medic, Crow's Eye, Eek. Nice. Okay. So yes, obviously Ciri doesn't have anything to damage here, but it's mostly just the threat of if they don't have a way to answer her, then we are going to give ourselves card advantage going into round 3 and potentially double last save, which is amazing, especially when we have duelists, which means suddenly they may not be able to answer them at all. So that's why I think we do probably still go with Ciri here. If you wanted to push a little bit harder in round 2, you could go Redanian Knight first, but I still think this is probably going to be a relatively short round with perhaps Ciri and Ciri alone. So at the very least, what this does is it forces them to use one of their best removal cards to get rid of her, so they won't have that for round 3. If not, then if they just try to outscore us, or just destroy Ciri, yeah, really, destroying Ciri with outright damage is probably the best answer. Or keep waving her. Yes, however, it does not put any units on the board, so they're still tied at us 0-0. We pass, and that forces them to play another card here, which means we will have, as we were planning to do, card advantage and double lassay in round 3, which is huge. Okay, so we draw into Geralt, obviously, great removal. Donamir, to protect stuff. Do we actually have any Witchers remaining for Geralt Quen to tutor? We do not, notably. Oh, that's an interesting one. We may have actually wanted to mulligan Ciri in round 2 and use Geralt Quen to get her instead. That technically might have been preferable. It would have been a pretty steep commitment in round 2, but then again, we were trying to force them to keep pace with us, and they weren't able to, so maybe we could have gotten 2-card advantage if we had gone that route. Either way, I mean, he's still 10 points, so I guess we'll keep him. But, Crow's Eye, maybe still relevant. I guess we stick with this. Although, tell you what, if we could get Onsace, that would definitely be ideal. That is the key card that we're missing here. But, or Royal Decree to get him. Okay, they're leading off with another Mantlet. The shields are actually, from their leader ability charge, the most annoying thing at this stage. I'm a little surprised they're using one on Mantlet. But that is because, of course, we are planning to use at least Selkirk with one of those leader ability charges so that he can duel their biggest card. So that's probably going to be one of the last cards that we play. Because we have double last save, means they won't be able to answer him at all, which is really nice. But for now, I think we lead off with the Redanian Knight. We deliberately saved this as an engine to play early in round 3, so that they need to find some kind of answer to it. And we honestly might even use Donimir to protect that. Okay, it's a Ballista, which does a little bit of damage, but not enough to outright remove that armor. So I think, yeah, let's throw a Donimir down here, because since we've already played both series, those are usually the most important cards for us to protect. And we also have more Shieldwall charges than we really need, because we definitely want to save one for Selkirk, but with no Onsace, that's not as big of an emphasis. Okay, they do certainly have more damage, but they're going to have to go through Donimir first. So yeah, they're trying to load up on this armor to make it harder for us to take them out, but if they have high base power cards, we're going to be able to destroy them regardless of how much armor they have. He is going to make Red Haze a bit tricky here. We could use it to get rid of Ronvid, but that's obviously just going to come back, so that's not really a good idea. And I think what we're probably looking to do in that case is a Field Medic to boost Donimir and Redanian Knight up. That's definitely a strong option. The other thing is getting Eek down here relatively early, just to threaten the removal, where they know that if they try to play anything big, we can immediately remove it, and if he's protected by Donimir, then, of course, it's going to be hard for them to get to Eek to shut that down. So, technically, it's probably best to play Eek first. Technically speaking. Just so that we have more time in which we can threaten this removal. Whereas, they have damage, yes, but I don't think it's going to be enough to remove Donimir right now. If they had outright removal that they wanted to use on him, they would have done it already. Okay, so Temerian Drummer for some boosts. And we could destroy that with Ronvid on Red Haze. Go boop, boop, take you out. And it's a 5 power unit, which is not huge, but it is also generating 1 additional point per turn. So it's not insignificant. That may be worth doing. I think because it generates value over time, we might as well go for that as early as possible. So yeah, I think we go for it. We, of course, have other tall removal with Geralt of Rivia, Igni, and with Selkirk. So for that reason, it's not as needed for us to hold on to every other source of removal. Speaking of Igni, this makes me a little nervous. That is 3 cards with the same amount of power, and all in the same row. Fortunately, it's Anastranger instead. That's another card that we probably would like to find a way to remove. Would love if they were all on the same amount of power here. They almost lined up there. She's not boosted at the moment, Anastranger, so she's not inspired, which means she's functionally just a Temerian Drummer with slightly higher base power. So if they do boost her, then, I mean, depending on how much they boost her by, could become potentially viable Geralt of Rivia, or if the numbers line up, Geralt Igni target. By the time we play Selkirk, she's going to have done most of her boosting already, so that doesn't make as much sense. But let's go with... I think that means we can delay a little bit. Boost up Donimir a little bit more to make it harder for them to get rid of him, and sure, Eek as well, just so we don't have quite as many big units here. City Guard they could use to move Donimir if they really wanted to. I'm kind of skeptical that that's what they're planning, but it's possible. Now remember that Geralt Quen, because we've already played all of our Witchers, / have the remaining Witchers in her hand, is purely just a 10-point body, and so there's something to be said for just using him as a bit of a throwaway here, possibly putting him in the melee row so that we don't have as many 10-power units in the same row. Yes, if they had Igni, they probably would have already used it because they had a good opportunity, but just in case, we probably do this. Because we want to save our big removal cards until as late as possible. Speaking of Igni, I mean, if we had played Geralt in that range row there, they would have had a 30-point Igni. 20 is still really solid if they do choose to go that route. Oh, Regis. We don't have any boosted units out in the open here. So you're not really a threat to drain anything right now, though you are currently tied for the biggest unit in their melee row. Now, that would give the impression that Igni is a strong play here because it is worth 20 points. Yes, however, remember, that Ronvid can come back out from their graveyard whenever they play a soldier. He has been boosted a bit, so he's not going to come back with those boosts. He'll come back as a 6. So this is probably more like a 14 removal on Igni, which is still decent, but is not amazing. So, given how we still have Geralt, we still have Selkirk, I suppose it's still okay if we go for this now. And given all the 10s, again, or actually, this will be an 11 at the end of our turn, so it is perhaps a little bit better to go, well, hold on. Hold on just a second. If we go Crow's Eye, and we go Eik, again, technically not the biggest concern, but just in case they do use Curek City Guard to move Donmir, then they would have had actually a very solid target for that trade. Oh, we know what their last card is. They bricked their hand a bit. It's Lambert. So, alright. I wish you weren't an 8. Then there'd be a great Igni target there as well. Alright, so, well, tell you what I think. Tell you what I think we're going to want to do. That means we know that last card is not a soldier, so they aren't going to be able to get Ronvid back out if we remove him here. So I think what we do is we remove Ronvid with Geralt. That means their melee row is going to be 2 9s. Yes, however, it's not going to be igniable unless they play Lambert in that melee row, in which case then it's an 18-point Igni. That's maybe worth taking that risk. Otherwise, it's a 9-point Igni there. I mean, I think it's worth taking a shot at it. You do that. It's already enough to take the lead here. Obviously, they do have 1 card remaining, whereas we have 2, but I think this is Lambert. I think they're going to play here next to Anna Strenger, and I think we're going to Igni that melee row, get rid of you 2, and then obviously, actually, we would wait 1 turn before doing that, and in doing so, we would actually have Lambert get up to a 9, and so we would remove all of them with Igni, and, exactly. Okay, now I know we're going to have won this already, but I need to do this because this just lines up too perfectly. So it's going to be Selkirk next, and we can duel that Curek City Guard once we put a shield on Selkirk on our next turn, and we can use Igni to remove every single unit from their melee row, because these are all going to line up at 9. So it worked out really nicely for us. Obviously, yes, they are currently in the lead, but if we do this, and that is technically already enough. Yes, it's a little bit of BM, but it's just too good to pass up. Because you do this. Oh, no, but the Oh, also, yeah, we technically should have done Selkirk Shieldwall charge at the end of our previous turn so that Igni had the initiative. Alright, I mean, fine. It also, because Anna Strenger was boosted, meant that they're boosting on both sides, so yeah, it didn't line up exactly as well as I'd hoped it would. But anyways, goodbye. Okay, so there you have it. We'll take the win. So there's a look at a Northern Realms Ciri deck for the new Power Shift seasonal event. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.